Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Kim Koster, and I am the VP of GovCon Strategy at Unanet, and I am also the co-author of the Gauge Report. And I am going to go ahead, introduce myself, and let my partner in crime, Christine, introduce herself.
Hi, LinkedIn friends. How's everybody doing? Glad to be here with you today. We're here to give you a little sneak preview of the 2025 Gauge Report. Kim and I have been working on it, and so little secrets coming out today, right, Kim?
That's exactly right. You're getting that sneak preview, and the actual report won't come out until the first week of June.
That's right.
I just want to say one of the coolest things that we did with this report was we gave this report a theme. And we've had lots of different things. We've had budgeting, we've had moving from a sub to a prime, we've had technology. And in this year, we picked project and resource management. And I couldn't think of a better year to have this topic. Can you, Christine? Pretty good.
I know. It's just everything I read about, everything I see, all the changes. It leads to better project management and resource management. And I know kind of the undertone of resource management, it might not have been the best over the last couple of years, but I think now being more efficient with everything that we do, it's key. And I didn't introduce myself, but I'll do it real quick. It's Christine Williamson. I lead our government contracting, audit, and advisory teams here at Cohen-Resnick, and I get to be one of the co-authors with Kim on the Unanet and Cohen-Resnick report. It's really exciting that we have been able to do this for 9 years, Kim. 9 years.
Yep.
Crazy.
It's been 9 years.
Stuff.
Yep.
All right.
Great partnership.
So can I jump in for you? And
Absolutely.
Give us.
We get a lot of information about who responded to the survey, but we're only going to give you two little small pieces today so that you'll kind of understand who's the voice that you're hearing. So 46% of our respondents are C-suite. Okay, so and the rest of them are a good mix of different kind of managerial positions. So you're going to get a really good voice of the strategy and the leadership of these teams. The other thing that we cut this by is revenue. So we have 52% that's small business, and then we have 48% that's OTSB. And Christine and I learned that acronym last year, other than small business. It was an acronym I didn't know, which was a miracle. With that, Christine, let's talk a little bit about what's happening in the market today.
Okay. Yep. And we're really happy about the spread of people that we have with their annual revenue too. So it's exciting once again that we have such a relevant number of people that make our gauge analysis and statistics really worth using. So the current business environment, and so think about this, we did the survey really right smack dab at the beginning of January, before January 19th, which January 19th is a key date for many government contractors because we have a new administration. And so new rule in town here in DC and across the government. And so I think part of the survey, folks were optimistic and realistic about, how the next couple of years was looking. But probably we didn't close that survey really until end of February, somewhat mid-March. So some of that pessimistic or neutral feelings about government contracting probably were starting to edge into that survey. It did drop down. We were 71% as a respondent whole, very and cautiously optimistic in previous years. We hovered around that. This year we went down to 65%. And not surprising. I mean, there's just a big change in what's happening. We have a new environment with federal government contracting, and with new environment, new changes, it's scary. There's a lot of rethinking, refocusing, rechanging, kind of redoing what government contractors have done because procurement's changing and the strategy of the federal government changing a little bit. So what does that mean, Kim? That means reforecasting your resources, reforecasting what projects you're spending the most time on, and re-looking at how well your projects are doing. So we're seeing a lot of that happen now this year. So the theme is perfect. So we ask about what are your companies' organizational worries year over year. And I love who our respondents are, because I think they were just spot on. I mean,
Yeah, it was perfect, wasn't it?
yeah, I mean, we ranked the first and the second. So you're going to see these percentages don't add up to 100. So these are their first and second ranking. But the political environment, top of mind, 45%. And then the overall economy, of course. I mean, we're seeing the stock market change and ebbs and flow with what our president is saying now, which wasn't happening over, probably the last 8, 10, 12 years. So really, our economy is really being affected as well, which affects how we run our business. And then the things that went down this year, the competition, maybe because we're more concerned with the overall economy, but resource and recruiting. It's more of a neutral game now between employer and employee. We don't see either one really having a game on each other, but working together. And then operational efficiency, though, I thought about this, Kim. This only went down 3%. And I think that goes to resource management and project management, where those are the things that are going to help you be more efficient if you focus on that operationally. So I just love how the respondents really focused on the questions and told us what was keeping them up at night. All right. So a lot of things that government contractors think about all throughout the year is, where am I going to get my new revenue resources? Where's the federal spending going? And that leads into cash flow. And so those are our top items here that we've seen over the past years, but they increased even more this year. Folks aren't, looking back and saying, am I aligned with my executives as much, or the organic growth? They're really focusing on what they have and then being innovative and trying to improve. There's just so much happening where we're looking at GSA procurement consolidations. We're looking at the Small Business Administration reorganizing, the small business targets going down. So all in all, us picking this theme of resource and project management, it just really hits home to everything new that companies are going to be doing this year, Kim.
Absolutely.
And then we, asked about telling us what type of items are really, really top of mind, and what concerns you that you need to focus on in addition to the funding and the spending. But we wanted to know, where does compliance fit into what you're doing this year, and the gaining efficiencies? And the one down at the bottom that really is focusing a little bit more on our theme this year, Kim, is the lack of integrated project tools. And I kind of focused on that because, I think that lack of project management tools is where a lot of people have felt that things have let them down, over the past couple of years. So I think with artificial intelligence, that's going to really help make our project managers smarter, and that's going to help them lead to better decisions, better data, better management of those projects. So I think the takeaway here is, 23% of our respondents said, and before it was 2024, the year before, but we're going to talk a little bit more about what happens when you don't have good project management and good accounting tools to really help you with that. All right, Kim, so you want to dive into some of our results on resource and project management as a whole?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and let's just dive into the next section.
Okay.
So every year, Christine and I ask about, what are your biggest project management challenges? And so we have this list, and we've been tracking this list for quite a while now. And over the last 4 years, we have seen that resource management is the biggest challenge overall. So, and the one thing about these charts, when you look at them, when we rank them, we add the first and second choice in. So you'll also see some issues, if you look at the green, with forecasting as well as inexperienced project managers. And so that's interesting. But overall, the number 1 and number 2 rating together is resource management. The one thing about resource management is we all know it's hard. There's absolutely no doubt. And as government contractors, it's been even more challenging because we don't know if the contract's going to be delayed, when we're going to get it. Is it going to be protested? Is it going to be canceled altogether? And we don't want to get staffed too early and then have to eat that cost. And we don't want to get it too late and not be able to execute our project and be on time and delight our customer, right? So we also have specialized skills that we need to get. We may have people that need a clearance, a special access clearance, some kind of certification. So all of those things have to be considered in our resource management overall capability and the timing that we get those resources on our projects. The other thing is we just lack that central visibility. So, and you'll see in just a minute what tools people are using, but it's really hard to understand what your supply and demand for labor or any other kind of asset is unless we can understand where it's being used in different places. So if somebody's got that sitting down in Excel, Bob's got that out in building A, and we're trying to figure out how many resources we need in the main office. We have no idea what Bob's doing. So, I think that's really important and really makes it challenging. If we could fix this, we would have faster proposal turnaround. We would be able to understand what resources we had when. I believe our profit margins would be improved. And overall, we're going to have better contract performance because we're going to know when we need those people and we're going to have them in on time. The other thing too is we really want to be able to do strategic workforce planning. So, having the right people at the right time, and maybe a mix of employees as well as subcontractors so that we mitigate the risk for execution, but we're also maximizing our profit, that maximize our profits. So, that's what we're all we're here for, is to do that. Right, Christine. And we also have that competitive differentiator. So, we know that we can staff when we need to be able to staff. Okay, next one. So what would be the items that people chose to enhance resource management? The first one really was improved project planning and forecasting. And I want to tell you, it was a couple of years, was it 2023, Christine, that we did forecasting as our theme. And we learned so much about that because the challenge in forecasting is real. Okay, it is hard, and it's hard for all different sizes of companies and all different types of companies. And we said, our report was evergreen. Please go back and take a look at the 2023 gauge. It will definitely give you some great information and tips on forecasting, checklists, etc. So we all know we need to improve that project planning and forecasting. And so that's something everybody should be concentrating on. And we also have, second would be communication. And we have had communication problems since the 80s and 90s. And even though we're so advanced today, as far as how we can communicate and the tools that we have to communicate with, people still say, we don't get the communication that we need. And sometimes I just get too much communication. I don't know about you, Christine. I get so much communication now, it's absolutely overwhelming. Okay.
Yes, and it comes from all directions, right?
I know.
And so you want to make sure that people are getting the communication at the right time as well. Not too soon, not too late, and not confusing with other communication.
And not too much, like a million emails. Yeah. That's very frustrating.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So the next thing we talked about last year, we asked for what were your ways that you were going to make your project management practice more efficient. And we saw this we asked about efficiencies in multiple different areas last year. And what we found was the main thing was people were going to update their policies and procedures. And that is a great way, though, to use AI to help generate some of that content for those policies and procedures. But it was also, when we did the forecasting report, it was also stunning to know how many people did not have forecasting policies and procedures, nor were they executing the policies and procedures that they actually had. So, this is something that definitely everybody should be looking at. Second, we saw ditch the spreadsheets and automate. So I think people are realizing we cannot do project management or resource management in a silo. We've got to know where those resources are being used so that we can use them very efficiently and really concentrate on our utilization rates. I'm going to skip down. We have artificial intelligence, which is very interesting, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But I want to drop down to PMO. So the one thing people were going to use was to change the structure of their PMO or form a PMO. And so I think that's something that we are definitely seeing a trend. And if you go to the next chart, Christine, I'll show the trend to these guys. And we have seen an uptick over the years. So of no PMO, excuse me, a downtick of no PMO. So, people are realizing that they do need to have that project management office. We also have seen a huge uptick, and that's the light blue on the bottom, of centralized. So from 2018 to 2025, we've seen that big change. And so, and if you don't clear on the difference between centralized and decentralized, centralized is really corporate wide. So we're looking at policies and procedures and tools and templates and other kinds of reporting that's being consistently used across the enterprise. You may have different types of projects. Some don't need all the rigor that others need. So there will be policies and procedures and tactics to tailor some of these processes that are being used. So, it really gives an overall consistency across the company and helps you align with all of your strategic goals. Decentralized, there's some good reasons to have decentralized. Maybe you're a smaller company and you have one big cost plus contract that you need to manage with great rigor, but you've got another small handful of fixed price contracts that you don't need to manage as rigorously. So that PMO may be set up just only around that particular project. I can tell you that the one thing about having a PMO, it's going to give you that improved oversight and reporting. It's going to make you more efficient from a cost perspective because you're going to execute on those projects correctly. You're also going to be able to do resource management better and have those central tools where you understand the supply and demand. You can have strategic alignment, and you're going to have great access to all that data. And it's going to be consistent sets of data. So we're not going to have Excel spreadsheets out in Building 10.
And Kim, I'll be honest with you, it was probably 7-8 years ago when we started using PMO offices and PMO hiring people. And I pushed back on it. I didn't think that it was as important. I don't know what I'd do without them now. It makes you a better project manager when you have a PMO office. And so one of the biggest advices I would say is, really take a look at that if you don't use that in your business right now. And the neat thing about this year's gauge is we're going to cut a lot of the information. We're going to give you the stats of the respondents, and we're going to say, here's the ones that have a PMO and here's the ones that don't. And we're hoping we're going to see a big correlation.
Yeah, I have a sneak surprise for you. I saw that people who have a PMO, they're much more likely to be using AI. And so, definitely looking at those tools and making the most of the opportunity for that. So, okay, so let's talk about forecasting tools that are being used for labor right now. We still have Excel spreadsheets, and I will tell you that came down. So that maroon bar is showing some change on that. So people are starting to realize maybe that Excel is not, or any kind of spreadsheet is not the promised land.
That's good.
Yeah. Yeah. And more people are willing to integrate with their timekeeping system, right? So that's great.
Another positive move.
Absolutely. If we're using that and we're integrating, you're going to have an accurate forecast. And it's going to give you the ability to scale your business. If you don't know what resources you've got, you're not going to be able to do that. So I really think that, even though I work for Unanet, tools are going to be very important, and not just the tool, but the implementation of that tool, and the way you structure your policies and procedures so that everybody will buy into that. And a lot of that can be done through a project management office also.
Which is really going to help. Which is really going to help decisions made to be good decisions. We don't want decisions to be made on bad data. And that's what's going to happen, if we can't get the tools accurate.
Absolutely. And so some of the features in a resource management tool, we asked about that, but the number one to me is being able to track it and have it real time and available, so that when I log on to my system, whatever that system might be, that I'm able to see if I can use Christine or I can use Jacob, and what their skill sets is and when I can use them, and then I can plan my work. And I think that's one of the biggest ones. But I also need to know, I need to have dashboards and reports and things that are giving me actionable information about those resources. And so I think that's another huge one. And then being able to get that information, not necessarily when I sit down at my computer, but also on my phone. I think that's huge to be able to see that.
Yeah.
Okay. And then Christine.
Well, and speaking of tools.
Yeah, satisfaction. Yeah.
So whether or not you're getting this and you're doing it manual or in Excel or it's on your phone, or, if you have a great tool, we really wanted to know how satisfied folks are with the system that they're currently have in place. And, 35% says, okay, I'm satisfied or very satisfied. And really having 8% say they're very satisfied. I mean, that's just a small sliver. But look at that in the middle, Kim, that brown orange of 48% that are neutral. And I thought about that as I was preparing for this. And just like what I said before, decisions are made on this information. And there could be bad or good decisions made because of what the tool provides. There's also trust factors with your project managers. If they don't trust the tools, guess what? They're not going to use it. So then you have half of the people using it, or maybe management using it. And then you have all of your project managers going, I'm not really sure that tool's right. But guess who's using it? The C-suite could be using it, and you don't even really know it. So being neutral is not good in this area.
And you could also have HR using it and trying to hire people and have no clue, or you haven't made that change and you don't need that person anymore. So really huge that all functional groups can see it.
Right. And then you're making correlations with this information. So if this information says, that your people are 85% utilized, but then you go to look at your WIP reports of data of production cost or your revenue, and saying, I'm going to have this much revenue because my people were 85%. But let's just say that 85% was wrong, and that was really 75%. Then what does that do? Or you have this much availability for people, but then you really don't. So that's going to really affect your resource management and then your project managers overall managing your project. So we need good tools to make good decisions in real time as well. Making decisions 2 months later, it's too late. It's too late. So you could have a great tool, but if it doesn't give you the information in real time, that's also, really important. And then we've talked about communicating across the teams and the organization about what they're finding from their tools. And I think these kind of follow each other, Kim.
Absolutely.
Maybe a little bit better, that I feel like my communication is better with my tools. And I definitely agree with that. It opens up the, hey, click on this and tell me what you see. And everybody is clicking in the same place in the tools, on reports that are running. So I've noticed it in my organization where communication has really, really increased as we're managing our projects because of the new tools that we're using. And then Kim, tell us a little bit more about bottlenecks that folks do have and what their top challenges are, because I think these are spot on, that lack of communication and timeliness and inexperience of
inexperience. And one thing about that inexperience, I was thinking about this, just thought popped into my mind. This is a great way when we have this inexperience, but if you have a PMO, to start training some folks around resource management and around project management, and so and then training them in your policies and how that works within your business. So I think that's huge in order to get that experience. But lack of communication, like we talked about, timeliness, these are things that we would expect, and that we can correct with the right people, processes, and tools. Okay.
And then really you want to look at, are you aligned between doing a proposal and what the resource management sees as you're doing the proposal. That's 63% say it's a big challenge. And those challenges are probably like, I have to work longer but to figure this out if I'm going to be able to bid on this new proposal. I have to hire more people to help me with resource management. It takes those people to get up to speed as to what you do. So I can understand this 63% of that we're mostly aligned, but it's still a big challenge. And I'm hoping AI and training and tools is going to be the answer to help out folks with this, Kim.
Yeah, and there's also, really being able to understand what your longer term forecasts are. All that's very important. And that's actually coming, from that proposal process and into a forecast for financial people. So it's a big deal.
Exactly. And this, which I know we're getting close to the end, folks, but and we're giving you these sneak peek, really cool ideas to be able to help you with project management. So I know you're going to be excited when the report comes out. But this really talks about, what are my budget constraints on these managing? So am I going to have to buy and bring in new people? Am I going to have to build their skills? Or am I going to have to subcontract out? So I think it's really interesting, what budget constraints do to our project management resourcing, and we all have that problem. And then we look at the next couple that we're going to talk about, and I'll quickly peruse through some of these. But a lot of proposal preparation decisions really goes to where you're estimating and how well you're estimating. Do you have an adequate estimating system? Has it been found inadequate? We asked, or has it not been audited? And then there's 28% of our respondents that said, I don't have an estimating system, but I anticipate that requirement. And I think that's good. If you have a better estimating system, you're going to do better at your proposal, which is going to lead to better resource and project management. And then we asked folks about what they use for estimating. And we're going to talk more about this in the Gauge report. But I think this is going to change with fixed price contracts. Fixed price contracts are harder to estimate. And so our type of estimations and the type of the methodologies that we use, I think are going to really change. And technology and AI are going to help us with that, I would think, Kim. And we've got a couple minutes, and maybe you want to talk about that.
Yeah, so, we asked last year our theme was AI, pretty much. Right. And so we asked a lot of questions. So we've got some really great information between 2024 and 2025. And in here we can see that, we've seen an increase on the green bar, the green on the bar. You can see that there's been an increase across the board of people using AI or planning to use AI, which is in the blue. And so, and again, I said earlier, I gave that sneak preview. So people who are using AI are definitely going to be more likely to have a PMO. So I think that's really important. So getting all those people, processes, and tools running in one spot and using every tool available to you is definitely going to help with project execution. So we have absolutely run out of time, Christine.
Well,
we will not always do this.
We hit our mark. We're perfect.
We hit our mark.
It's 1:20. So we hope you all come to Champions. There we go, Kim.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about it.
Come to Champions, and actually Christine and I will be presenting. We'll be presenting a sneak preview of the entire Gauge, which has compliance and accounting, utilization, growth, and other efficiencies. So we look forward. Hopefully, we'll see you at Champions. And anything else, Christine, on your mind?
No. Thank you so much. I think this was great. We thank you, everyone, for LinkedIn for checking us out, and we look for us for more webinars and seminars, and I'd love to see you all at Unanet in Atlanta next week.
Woohoo! All right.
All right.
Thank you guys for joining us.
Have a good day.